Let's look at it right here, and we see that there is a series of shadows that are being cast by this part of the frame here. So let's go in and create that effect. Here's the curtains we just created in the last movie. And now all of a sudden there's a frame going across it, which means it will cast a shadow onto those curtains. So let's create that shadow. I'm going to turn off my background so we can see what's going to be happening here. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to take my path, the one path that's for the overall shadows. That's this one here, which is following all those folds, right? It basically created the folds. So I'm going to turn that into a selection. Turn off my path so I don't see them anymore. And I'm going to create one more layer here, which we'll call the shadows. And I'm going to put it behind the frame, right? So right here on the edge, I'm going to say shadow. And I'm going to inverse that selection so everything else is selected rather than the curtain area. So I'm going to say select inverse, and I'm going to go ahead and fill that with the black. I can deselect it now. That is the basic shadow that I'm going to be using. Now, I'm going to move that layer so that it's right here. I'm going to hold down my shift key to constrain it so it's moving right above where my little curtains are. Now, it's just about following those folds. It's a little off in some places because of the fact that the folds weren't perfectly even, but that's no problem. We can adjust that later. Move it up a little bit more. There we go. And then I'm going to go in here and duplicate that. I have a second one. This one I'm going to move even further up, like that. Now, the reason for that is because there are two different shadows here. This first one, the one that I just created, which is higher up, I'm going to put way down here, right by the curtains. There it is. See? It's right in there. Now I'm going to blur it. I'm going to give it a little Gaussian blur just to soften it up. There we go. Click OK. I'm going to set it up to be multiply. We'll leave the opacity just where it is. Okay. Now, might want to bring it up a little more, like that, because this is further back, so it's casting a longer shadow. And I'm going to erase the parts that I don't want, like right in there. All these little pieces that are just sticking out there like that. I want to erase those. And then I'm going to take that second one, and I'm going to put that one in front of the folds, right there. Now, this one I would need to extend. What's going to happen is I'm going to keep it inside the folds. So what I'm going to do is take the folds, make them a selection, and in that shadow say, give it a mask. So now we're seeing them only inside there, and I can go in there and continue to paint. Right here, we're just getting a paintbrush, and I'm going to just paint with black. You undo that because I was painting with the red. I want to paint in the shadow right there. I want to paint that with black to fill that up. And you know, see how it's following that nice little curvature? And we have this other one we have to do. Now that we have that, I'm going to blur that one, but not as much as the first one. Why? Because of the fact that these are closer to the frame. So I'll go into my Gaussian blur and give it less of a blur, about 2.2. That looks good. But I'm going to bring down the opacity just a little and set it to multiply. Then I'm going to select this whole bottom part right there and dump it. Same thing for the one in back. I'm going to go here to the shadow and dump it. And there you can see how we're starting to get that little shadow on top of our curtains. Now this one needs that same effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the shadow one more time here. Just duplicate this one more time. And this one we're going to put in front of that one fold right there. Now we're going to dump its mask because we want it to have its own little effect there. So this one we're going to have to really play around with. So I'm going to move it up a little more. Let's go in there, move that one up because we wanted to have this nice little sweep back here. And I'm going to increase that sweep by just going in there and just painting into that, adding a little more tone in there, just like that, and creating a mask for it by making that guy a selection and saying, take that and give it a mask. So now we're seeing that only inside there, and we'll give that the filter as well, just to soften that. And not the mask, we'll do it to the layer right there. We'll give it a little softening. This one will soften just a little more, and there you can see that now we have little shadows being cast on the curtains. If it's a little too much, you could take, say, this one right here and bring it down a little bit. Make it a little closer to the beam. And there you can get the feel of how these little shadows are being cast onto the curtains.